Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where last episode we landed our colony on the moon and we were preparing to deliver our colony science unit here. Now we need, this is great once we get this onto the surface. We need a way to get it to the moon and a way to land it onto the moon. But I also want to add on another docking port back here on the end, just in case we end up expanding it in this direction at all. So we can toss that in there. Now this needs a delivery mechanism. And the question is, how exactly are we going to deliver it? And how exactly are we going to make sure that we're in the correct orientation? Well, for that, I believe that we should do... Let's see, we could think about some sort of a sky crane type thing. Honestly, I think a sky crane is probably the way to go. What's the center of mass on this thing? That's not too bad, actually. So if we were to do a sky crane, we would potentially... How would I want to do this? We could use, like, grabbing units, in theory. But I don't think that's necessarily the best way to go. We could do that, though. So, like, a grabbing unit here... No, I really don't like that idea. I really strongly dislike that idea. So in that case, we would have like teeny tiny stack decouplers, like TS06s. Apparently they don't like to radially attach. Let's try TD06s. That doesn't like to attach here either. Okay, so in that case, we could do a radial decoupler, but I don't love it. If we're to do a radial decoupler, say here and here, like that, then that would connect onto something up here, which would probably end up looking kind of like a, I don't know, a T800. That's probably not really what we're going to, and I want 2 connection points here. So that's going to make things somewhat complicated. I don't know that this is actually going to be connected over here. Like, if we do this, that's not connected here. We could simply get rid of this and use struts. That's a possibility. So if we were then to use a strut, we can grab a strut connector, put this into mirror symmetry, although mirror symmetry isn't actually what we want. Radial symmetry is kind of backwards, so that's not really what we want either. We then grab this guy, move him to here, and duplicate that. Move him here. Okay. Something kind of like this instead. Cool. And then we can do the same thing over here on this side. So we drop it about here and put it in there. And then the same thing over here, just to make sure that this is nice and stable. So kind of like that. This is not exactly centrally located. This is going to be somewhat potentially awkward. We could certainly remove this, although I don't want to do that. What I wanted to do is I wanted to use the move tool, move the decoupler to be centrally located like that, and then move the tank back to be approximately centrally located like so. I'm going to turn off snapping here because we're not quite getting to the exact position I want this to be, which is about right here, maybe slightly further back, approximately like that. Now, this sky crane doesn't have any sort of like lowering device on it. That's okay. We're just planning to use this to land with. So we could put on modular girder segments in radial symmetry mode. And I want that to have snapping on. Thank you very much. We just want to get a little bit of space out over here. So now the question is, how much thrust to weight over the moon would we have if we were to put in a pair of, say, twitches? Just 2. Now, I think the one on the far side is going to be backwards. Yeah, it definitely is. But just looking at the thrust to weight here, that's 2.0. Fascinating. So what I was actually thinking about doing here is going into mirror symmetry. That's back into radial. Apparently we can't mirror symmetry here. Okay, we'll have to turn off our symmetry for the time being. And positioning 1 twitch here and 1 twitch here. We'll snap those into position a little later on. And then 1 here and 1 here. Kind of like that. So that gives us 2.95 thrust to weight. That should be more than enough. And the delta V here is ridiculous. Like, this is a crazy amount of delta V. This tank is only this size, to be honest, because it's approximately the correct length. We don't need this level of fuel. So we can drop down to having somewhere along the lines of... Even 600 feels like a lot. I think we'll sit at around... We'll leave it at 600. I want to make sure we have enough. Now, what is the impact tolerance of these Rovemax Model S2s? That is something we should know before we deliver this. So that impact tolerance is 20 meters per second, but I believe it may break the wheels. If it does, we can repair them with our engineer, but I believe we would need to have repair kits. Would we not? So let's see here. That's EVA fuel cylinders. I can't remember which one of these is the repair kit. I barely ever use it. This one. Okay, so do we have anywhere that we can store that? Actually, yes. We can store some repair kits inside of the science bay here, the mobile processing lab. So we bring in 4, and then we can... Apparently we can't duplicate that. Awkward. I tried to duplicate the 4 stack, but that doesn't appear to work. So we can bring in 8 EVA repair kits, which will be enough to repair every wheel that we have here. So that should be more than enough. Now we need to snap this into position here. There and there. And then there and there. Cool. So that should be symmetrical at this time. Beautiful. And we should have plenty of gimbaling to make that happen. But we're going to have to deliver this, and this is going to be offset unless we build our rocket down this way, like down the center of mass here. That's going to be an extremely wide payload. There's no doubt about that. Let's put this out on the pad, and let's just take a look at a couple of things here. First off, do we have thrust to weight to lift off on Kerbal with this? I don't think so, but I'd like to double check that. We could have checked that with KER, but I wanted to put it out on the pad and check it there because I also want to check that our wheels are approximately correct. Okay, so what is our thrust to weight here? 0.61. Yeah, I'm not shocked about that. Okay, so our center wheels should not turn. They only turn to the right. It's kind of awkward. But also, if we control from here... Okay, we can see that we're sideways, like this. So, control from here. Yeah. So I think that we need to rotate the Probodobodyne hex. Let's revert that back to the vehicle assembly. And we'll detach everything, rotate the hex, and see if that gets us our correct orientation. So we'll detach this, and then we will rotate the hex like one of these. There we go. And we'll see if that is, in fact, correct. This needs to get rotated around one of these. There we go. Like that. And then this would need to get rotated as well. Oh, that's exciting. That's very exciting. It doesn't want to go back on here at this point. Yeah, I'm having a hard time getting it to snap on the correct direction, which is this way. That's exciting. We'll try getting rid of it and duplicating this docking port. That works. Okay, cool. Now I wonder which way is up on here. Perhaps the arrow indicates that? I don't know. We'll see. We'll save that, and I do want to disable steering in this center stack here. And then the rest of these should be okay. We'll save that and put that out on the pad, and we'll check our orientations as well as our wheels. But delivering this is going to be interesting. There's no doubt about that. This is going to be a crazy big fairing, if we can even lift it with a fairing at all. we may not be able to, and that's going to make things weird, for sure. Okay, our turning looks good. We can see here that we're upside down at this point. If we control from the docking port is correct. So let's revert that back to the vehicle assembly. Realistically, we could just control from the docking port. But I'm going to, for now, detach that, detach this, and we now know that this little box goes on the bottom and the hex goes on the top. That makes sense. Okay, like that. Beautiful. That reattaches, and then this reattaches like that. Okay, that should be the correct orientation. Now, the fact of the matter is, delivering this is going to be wild. So we're going to need like a TD25 here. And the TD25 would go down here, right? Now, we could try to attach a modular girder segment, but we need a like radial attached decoupler here. So a radial decoupler would go here. And then a TD25, well, we wouldn't need a TD25. We've got the radial decoupler. So at this point, this connects to potentially a fairing, but we might need more space here. We'll see. Let's go ahead and go into our payload. And what is the largest fairing that we have? 2.5 meter. I don't think this is going to get wide enough. It's definitely not going to get wide enough fast enough. And apparently it doesn't want to attach. Oh. It attached to the wheel. That's exciting. I'm just checking here. Yeah, I don't think this will get wide enough. We may have to lift this without a fairing. Which there will be a decent amount of drag. And I want to check to see where that center of mass is. Yeah, so we definitely need to move this to be in line with the center of mass. So about like that. Cool. Okay, so from here, we would like to attach a, say... Well, actually, from here, we would like to append in our... Let's see. We could go with a, like, colony core here. So we'd like to merge this. The question is, this is a finished rocket. We need to get just the booster. So... we need to open up the colony core here. And we need to ditch out this, as well as this. We've got that engine there, which should be fine. And then we ditch everything up here. We're going to need a new root part, and this is going to be a temporary root part. So we're going to put in our, it doesn't matter what, a prototype octo will be just fine. So we'll grab the octo, we'll attach this here. And we'll call this the standard booster. Okay, we'll save that. And now we'll reload our colony science unit. Cool. Now we will load in our standard booster. And we'll merge that. And this we can attach to something. Like that. Then we can grab this. And yeah, that radial decoupler is really not what we're looking for. So we're going to get rid of that real quick. And we could put in like a cubic octagonal strut there. Well, we don't necessarily want it there. Let's go ahead and go into move mode. Make sure that we are visualizing our center of mass. And let's bring this on over. It's basically in line here. So about right there. Cool. And that cubic octagonal strut would then need to have, we can get rid of the prototype octo. We'd now need to have like a TD25 decoupler here. Like that. And then connect in the booster like so. Now we're going to need struts. That's for sure. We're definitely going to need some structural reinforcement on this connection. So we'll connect that in simply like that. Okay. This is horrific. I'm not going to lie. I have no idea how this thing is going to fly. But my guess is poorly. We have some empty fuel here. If we have leftover fuel in this tank, we can transfer it up here. And that's an interesting idea. We could leave this tank unfueled and move in leftover fuel. That's a distinct possibility. Now, we don't have a correctly oriented control method here. So things are going to be weird control-wise, and we've got this area sticking out over here. We're going to pull this way due to air resistance and mass. We can see here that we're slightly off-center on our center of mass. Actually, it's not too bad. It's pretty close. We should run a test flight here. I have no idea how this thing is going to fly. I suspect not amazingly well, but I don't think we can fit this into a fairing. So we could give this a test flight real quick. This will be a simulated flight. I have no idea what the control is going to look like. It's going to be weird because it's going to be sideways. And I don't know... Okay, we should definitely fix that control issue. So, we can toss in another Probodopadine hex, in theory, up here on top. So the way that I would want to do that is by bringing in a cubic octagonal strut again. So we'll go into structural, cubic octagonal, and I don't want this to be in any sort of symmetry. We'd place it basically center of mass, which it pretty much is, to be honest. Center of mass there. And then the Probodopadine hex would go here. And the idea about that would be this is what we fly with. We could put a nose cone on it, and we could put a decoupler on here in theory too. I would like to get rid of this at some point. We're going to have this cubic octagonal strut as well. Well, this is going to be part of the sky crane, so it will fly away when the sky crane does. So in theory, that would be fine. We could put on a nose cone here. That would be funny. We could go with something along the lines of this guy. It's a little bit oversized, but that's probably okay. Our aerodynamics are going to be a mess. This is not really going to help that much, but I find it amusing. So let's do a test flight here. I don't expect this to go tremendously well. And also, I'm noticing we don't have solar panels on this of any description. Yes, we're going to need solar panels. So I'm just going to put a pair of 1x6s on here, and they are going to be mounted here, opposite of the batteries. Cool. So that looks good. Well, no, it does not look good, but it looks maybe functional. Maybe functional. Let's do a test flight here. I have no idea what the flight profile of this thing is going to be. It's going to be wild. We're going to need to change our control point. No doubt about that. Okay, so we're loading this on in. And we need our initial control point to not be this guy, which that's the current root part. So we could change that root part, but we would want to control from here. SAS on, RCS on. We can actually grab this stuff. This is all reusable science. We're going to eventually have a scientist in here as well. We need at least one crew in there. So throttle up, and let's see how poorly this thing flies. I mean, off the pad, it seems okay. Let's try our turn here. And this is just a test flight. We're definitely going to revert this. We don't have the crew in here that we want. We can see that we're definitely pulling off of 90 degrees here. There's no doubt about that. We're probably going to have to perpetually correct for that. But it's fairly controllable. The question is, are we going to have anything burn off during ascent here? And that, I don't know. Also, I didn't check our initial thrust to weight here, and I probably should have. We've picked up a bit of a roll. And our apoapsis is not very high. So we can try to park here and see what happens. Time to apoapsis is currently increasing. It does feel fairly controllable. And we're really starting to pick up speed now. As we punch up through the atmosphere here. Side tanks detached. They took out those 2 wings there because we weren't in prograde. And that means that we're uncontrollable. Okay, so that is definitely noted. We do need to be in prograde there. So what ended up happening there was simply that we were a little too aggressive on the gravity turn. We're picking up too much horizontal speed and not enough vertical. I mean, this is over at this point. We were always going to revert that. But that is some interesting lessons learned there. Very interesting indeed. To the point where I think this is viable. I do think this is viable. Now, this nose cone doesn't have any sort of a detachment mechanism, and we may want to include one. Not that I think it's strictly necessary, but it would probably be for the best. We can put in a TD12 decoupler like that. I'd like to actually rotate around the TD12 so that hopefully it goes with the nose cone. Like that. Cool. And I actually want to do the same with this decoupler here if we can. That was not what I wanted to do. Okay, let's undo that. I want to grab just this decoupler. There we go. And I want to attach it like so. Well, I want to make sure that we are in the center of mass here. So let's detach all of this for the moment. And then center of mass overlay. And we're going to need to move this decoupler to be not here, but... Oh, that's not the decoupler. Can I grab just the decoupler here? Having difficulty getting to it, but maybe if we clip in the camera. There we go. That's the decoupler. Cool. So the center of mass we know is up over here-ish. Okay. So we do something like that. The idea here is that the decoupler goes with. We can run some tests on that. I'm just trying to get this thing to the correct orientation. There we go. That's not the correct orientation at all. Okay. Something kind of like that. And then we're going to have to redo these struts, but that's fine. Okay, so we can see that this is basically in line with the center of mass, which is exactly what we wanted. And we can move that over. That was not what I wanted to do. We'll undo that. And we will grab this guy and move him up to here. Okay, so next thing that we should test is the decouple here. So we'll save this, put this out on the pad. We're not going to lift this off just yet. I'm actually shocked by how controllable that flight profile was. We just needed more vertical speed. So that is something that we can correct for pretty easily. Let's get this onto the pad. And then all we need to do is control from here. And then run this decouple here. So this decouple is this guy. Okay. So now we should be able to lift off here, I think. Did this decouple go? Hang on. The staging is all sorts of messed up. But let's just do this real quick. We haven't done our staging just yet. Oh, right. There's no fuel in here. We'll pin this open and pin this open. Okay, so this decouple didn't decouple. Noted. We'll revert that back, and we'll just switch that back over. I just wanted to make it go with to make it slightly prettier, but that's not going to be an option, it would appear. So we'll take that off of there and then grab the decoupler here. Rotate it back around. Place it about here. Checking with the center of mass. That's approximately correct. Cool. And then we put this guy back on. There we go. And we connect up our struts. We can double check our center of mass. We're about ready to lift this thing off, but we're not quite there yet. Okay, so this center of mass is looking very good. It actually didn't change when I did this, which means that it's not actually updating correctly. But let's see here. Yeah, it should be reasonably fine. That looks good, actually. That looks really good. Well, no, it looks terrible. But my point is the center of mass looks very well lined up. Okay, let's do one last pad test here, and we're going to lift this thing off in the next episode. It took a little longer to design this than I thought, but it's a complicated delivery, so it's going to be interesting. But we're going to be able to reuse bits of this for our other colony parts, so that should be absolutely fine. So let's get this in position here. And what we want to do is we want to fill up this fuel tank. At least a little bit. I can see there's a gap here. It's not ideal, but it's fine. Okay, that's good enough. Now we will decouple this radial decoupler. Swap to this guy. And... hilarious. Okay, so that's not shocking. We were in a kind of awkward position, and we'll just revert that back to the launch. Okay, so... once it detaches, it's fine to spin off and do that, right? What I want to make sure is that it's somewhat controllable. And the reason we picked up that spin was because we had it split up into two. Like, only 3 of our engines fired there. So we definitely want to make sure that that's not going to be the case. Okay, there we go. Cool. So this should be plenty of fuel. There we go. And we'll try this one more time. I'm going to decouple this right now because that's not going to be on there eventually. Is that going to destroy anything when it comes back? No, we're good. Cool. Okay, and then we will control from here. Kaboom. This is all going to be reverted, which is fine. And then we are going to SAS on. We're going to decouple this, but I want to make sure that all of these are in the same stage. There we go. So we decouple this, throttle up, swap over. At this point, this is fine. But it's actually getting under control. Ish. This doesn't have to fly stably. So that's fine. All it has to do is exactly what it did there. So we'll revert that back to the vehicle assembly. That is exactly what we wanted it to do. So that is looking good. There's only one test left at this point. And I do want to get this done this episode, but it's already getting late in the episode. And unfortunately, I have to put a cut in here. I was hoping to get the entire testing regimen done this episode, but unfortunately, it didn't. There's a ladder on here that we don't need. We'll get rid of that ladder. Cool. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and next episode, we are going to try a quick landing test. And that'll be absolutely great. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, subscribes, and bell ringings. And as all, what am I doing? I'm completely messing up this outro. I'm very confused. Okay, this is exciting. I'm also noting that this is offset here. We're probably going to want to fix that. This guy should be in line with this line. So about here-ish. Cool. There we go. As I said, you can leave your offerings in the normal ways, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible. I don't have my notepad up because I just started up my computer and I forgot to start it up. So, a very special thank you to Casserole, ALS Gamer, Ken2Win, James, Shadowwolf, MLohan80, Spartan News, Nick Smarty, Video Games Are Not Real, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, Unisoul, Kadra, Rogue Corvid, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.